Okay.
Good to know.
Yes. I guess before we proceed, I just want to make clear that as we discuss this year's rather controversial Pulitzer results, in which no cartoonist was named a winner, I don't mean to take away from the many talented cartoonists who have won Pulitzers. Among them are many of my friends and colleagues, and I really love and respect their work. And so my goal here is not to be disrespectful of them, but to try and figure out what the heck happened this year. And because an awful lot of people were upset about it, myself included. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start introducing you guys. So with us today is Ruben Bolling, the creator of Tom the Dancing Bug, a brilliant comic strip, ran in many alt weeklies for years, and now I guess Boing Boing is your primary perch. You want to tell us just a little more about yourself real quick, Ruben?
Well, sure. Yeah, the comic strip, Tom the Dancing Bug, is a weekly comic strip. It got its start it really with alternative newspapers building up through, many such as the Village Voice. I ended up in the Washington Post for many years. And so it is sort of an alternative style of comic strip. It's a little bit unusual, especially, it's unusual for an editorial cartoon, which I guess is may become relevant in our discussion, in that it takes sort of a sketch comedy approach to all of its subjects. And it's not always political, but it's a political and social satire. Yet now it's mostly it's still in many newspapers, but its main exposure is online on boingboing.net and Daily Kos and Go Comics.
And I should mention that you are the winner of the Herb Block Prize, winner of the RFK Journalism Award, and a two-time Pulitzer finalist.
Right. Yes.
And you got some Orange Julius bona fides as well, I believe.
I'm an applicant, so I have fingers crossed.
Okay. Up next, we've got Lalo Alcaraz, who is a man of many hats, also a two-time Pulitzer finalist, who does editorial cartoons, who created the La Cucaracha comic strip, activist, TV writer, producer. Can you summarize yourself briefly, Lalo?
I know. How much time do we have? No, I consider myself a Chicano artist that works in a lot of mediums, and primarily I'm a political cartoonist, have been since I was a teenager, and dovetails with being a Chicano artist, and my approach is eclectic, but centered on immigrant rights and Latino culture, Mexican American culture, Chicano culture primarily, but every topic seen through my lens, I think I'm still befuddled, and we had a pre-game email going around. We're joking, well, Ken was, about being bitter. And I mean, I'm normally bitter throughout my whole life. So this is just one more thing to be bitter about. So I'm still a little befuddled about what happened here. Yeah, I'm a befuddled Chicano artist.
Well, bitterness is a prerequisite for the job in the first place. Let's move on to Marty Two Bulls. Marty is a member of the Oglala Lakota from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation of South Dakota. I've got that right. Your work appears in the Lakota Times. Marty, can you tell us a little more about your career as a cartoonist?
Well, I started cartooning when I was in high school, kind of by accident, actually. I needed some English credits. So I took a journalism course and started doing their graphics and editorial cartoons and that kind of thing. But my primary focus is is my art. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, and editorial cartoons is something I kind of do on the side. And through my career, I started gravitating toward newspapers, first weeklies and then dailies. And I spent a bulk of my career in daily newspapers, 13 years as graphics editor with the Rapid City Journal and the Argus Leader in South Dakota. Primarily covering breaking news, that kind of thing. So, and all the while I've been doing cartoons. But, as Lalo and Ruben knows, you don't make much money off this. So it was kind of a thing to, buy the kids dinner, take them out to movies, that kind of thing. So I do these cartoons for the fun of it. And it's still fun, so I still do it. And being in newspapers, I got used to deadlines, weekly deadlines, daily deadlines. And so I just do these cartoons every Friday, and just kind of as a regiment, keep me sharp, as well as doing other things as well, So I do work on graphic novels. I have 3 regular comic strips that I also do, called D's, Tabloka, and Res Dogs. And I also do a COVID cartoon for newspapers. But those are weeklies, so it's not as tough as a daily. And artwork and websites and logos and you name it. So,
And I believe we can see your editorial cartoons on Go Comics.
Yeah, Universal Press Syndicate.
Right.
Carries it.
Right. Okay, so let's step back to that fateful day in June when when the Pulitzers were announced. I found out on Twitter. I think I checked in on Twitter about 20 minutes after it happened, and I was gobsmacked. I'd like to hear about just where you were and what that was like for you when you got the news. Start with Lalo.
I think I was up working, it was in the morning, and probably on a script or something, and I got a text from I'm really bad at saving the contact info, so I got a text from some number that said, "Oh man, you got robbed," and I was like, I had forgotten that the Pulitzer was coming out. I was blown away last year when the previous year when I was a finalist. I was like, I'm never going to get nominated again, so this is great. And I did not expect, although I had, like my fellow finalists, I had a pretty strong portfolio to present. So I wasn't totally hopeless, but I was looking at my phone going, what does this mean? And then I got on, I don't know, and then I think my business partner emailed me, and then everybody started emailing me, and it's like, what is going on? And then I was also had just hopped on to a Zoom at work. I work also at Nickelodeon and on the show called The Casa Grandes, and we were all on a Zoom. We've been working from home since you know what, and I was like, confused on the Zoom more than usual, and I had to tell everybody, I think I just lost the Pulitzer. I think, I don't know, I can't figure this out. What happened? And that's where I was.
So Marty, how about you?
I was up driving out to get coffee, so I was just cruising down the road, and then my phone went off, and it just went crazy. So I had to pull over and figure out what's going on, and it took a long time to actually try to figure this thing out. Did I win or didn't I win? So kind of crazy. So, I was with my daughter, so I was talking to her. I think I'm a finalist for the Pulitzer, or if there's a runoff election, I don't know. So it took a little research to figure it out.
And Ruben?
Yeah.
How about you?
I was attending my daughter's high school graduation. So it was a very emotional moment for me for reasons other than what was going on. But I'm sitting there in the audience in this like weird outdoor COVID socially distanced compromised graduation ceremony. And I just checked my phone and my son was trying to get in touch with me. He was not allowed to go because only 2 people could go per kid. And he said, we're a finalist for the Pulitzer. And I was so happy and excited to get that message. Like Lalo, I was a finalist before. So that was just like, wow, that's great. And then I texted back who won. And just to find out, meanwhile, my daughter was on the stage facing me and seeing me looking at my phone. So she had some words with me afterwards, not knowing why I was somewhat preoccupied. But he said, it looks like no one won. Then I just was like sitting there through the end of the ceremony, like, what happened? How could no one win? And I guess I've never really gotten any more clarity than I had at that moment when I was totally confused. So yeah, I mean, the 3 of us have no knowledge about what happened. We're just sort of, been thrust into the controversy by the fact that we were named the 3 finalists who could not get over get into the end zone.
Right. And I believe the only public statement I've heard was that the board itself could not come to a consensus, the Pulitzer board. The past 2 years, there's been a situation where I guess the judges, who are comprised of cartoonists and cartoon experts, did they present a trio of finalists to the board. And the way the Pulitzer's works is the board then considers those finalists and then either chooses one or does its own thing. And I guess it has been the case that for the past 2 years, the judges have picked 3 finalists who the board did not choose from. After, I think that the deliberations are fairly intense from what I hear. It's a couple of days of deliberations. Do you think that maybe there was a level of discomfort with any of your work, or what, speculate a little bit about what you think might have happened here? Well, I know, Ruben, you did write a blog post, a very compelling blog post, where you did feel after your submission this year, which was incredible, you did feel a bit insulted by the judgment.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I guess the one thing, like as Lalo referred to, I don't want to come across as bitter about this, or although I am insulted, and so there is that. But in terms of awards, I honestly do not begrudge any award that I've lost. I don't feel as though I deserve anything. So it's not as though oh my God, I should have won. How could they not have recognized my work? So I don't feel that way. I just feel as though if the jury presents the board, the jury is cartoon sort of specialists or deemed that way. They present 3 finalists to the board, which is really the high priests of journalism. And that board can't decide or won't name a winner, then I feel like there's only 2 possibilities. Either they, as they say, they couldn't come to a consensus or a majority decision, which I just find unbelievable. I mean, I've been on award boards, and I don't like to do it because I don't like to judge. It's so hard to judge between who's better, who had a better year. It couldn't be more subjective. So I don't have any, I know it's hard, but that's your job. Just get it done, do it, and go out to drinks. You just have to make a decision. I feel as though, there's no objective answer here, but they seem to be the ones to be saying, no, there is an objective answer. And that is that no one here, either we couldn't decide, or no one here deserves it. And I really am insulted by that. They didn't have to choose one of us. They could have chosen any editorial cartoon. They could have gone outside of that. And to say that that nobody deserved it, I think is just insulting, because I think some of the best work in the history of editorial cartooning is being done in these times and in last year.
Absolutely. Well, given 2020, I mean, look what happened in 2020. You had George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, COVID, the election, and the beginnings of a coup attempt, which cartoonists, I think, as well as late night comedians, were a lot quicker to point out, I think, than mainstream media, who were trying to shoehorn things into a more normal narrative. Marty, Lalo, what's your take on last year and how like what just speak to the events of last year and maybe
Can I just say, I mean, I also don't want to come off as bitter about this or sour grapes. It is weird, and I mean, I had the same thoughts Ruben did about, like, well, then what is good enough? If our stuff is not good enough, okay, we all know each other. We all know each other as finalists. We all know each other as colleagues, and we all know everyone's great. So anybody, exactly, I agree. Anybody could have been picked, and so then, I mean, then be clear on the in the instructions, like, are we drawing Greek statues, or are we, like, are we drawing encyclopedic treatises on, I mean, what do they want? It's just, I thought it worked for many years, and just, this was just weird. Or I guess I forgot about, there was a little weirdness last time too, but and I have to say, as a minority, as an ethnic minority, we all know, and I know, women understand this, whatever race you are, we have to try 10 times harder just to be on the same level. And it's not because we're not capable, it's because we're perceived as lower quality, or whatever biases that are already out there. We got some extra ones too. So that, it felt familiar to me, the rejection, the feeling. It's like, oh, what do I got to do, man? How many extra? I tried 10 times harder. I got to try 11 times harder now. Jeez. Okay. I will. I'm not giving up. But that just, honestly, that is, it just felt familiar. Like, all right, here we go again. But I'm probably wrong. They're probably great people over there on the board.
Marty, does that resonate with you as well?
Well, we're basically, these awards that were, they're affirmation for all the hard work you do, and all the, we work in solitude, cartoonists. So every once in a while, it's kind of nice to be acknowledged, but basically we're also business people, and these awards bring new clients, they bring recognition, and that's part of a business plan for anybody to adhere to. And, running this contest, I think they got caught up in their own rules. You had cartoonists select the best ones, and then it went to a board. And if you look at these boards' background, they all came from either book publishers, as a lawyer, as poet, and then the rest of them are newspaper people, that came up the ranks. And, I sat in those meetings before, where we'd agonize over a story, and we'd had to change things, or we'd have to bring in the lawyers to look over the thing before we even published it. So there's a vetting process for every news story that we deem controversial that rises to that level. And so, being in these meetings, I also know that cartoonists are also judging the same thing. If I submit an editorial cartoon to a newspaper, it's going to have to go through that process. So these editors are going to have to look at it, the opinion editor, the God knows who else, the weekend editor will all look at it and they'll all have their input. And they'll say, well, we need to change this, or we can't say that. And so they want to play it safe. The more safe they are, the better for their careers. So consequently, these cartoons go through a vetting process. They might have started out really funny, but at the end of the day, they kind of get kind of watered down. But they're safe, you see. But as a freelancer, I don't have to put my cartoons through that process. You know, I say what I want. And if they don't like it and they don't want to print it, that's fine. You know, but I'm not going to change it. You know, and I do this because it's fun. And when it stops being fun, I'll stop doing it. So consequently, I'm not beholden to anybody to accept my work.
I also enjoy the same freedom as a freelancer, and I love it. And so I don't have to worry about being edited most of the time. I have noticed a change over the years since I started. I mean, like, I'm published mostly in alternative media and progressive websites. And it seems to me, though, that it was a little more frequent when I was first starting out, maybe the first half of my career, that a mainstream publication would reach out. And I know, like, Ruben, you said you were published in is it the Washington Post or the New York Times, or
Washington Post? I was in the New York Times, on, in their week in review. I did a lot of work for the LA Times. So I was sort of an alternative, but I began bridging over into a lot of daily newspapers. I was on the editorial pages of a lot of daily papers.
Yes, right. And what I've observed in the past few years is there really is like this wall all of a sudden that seems to have come down. And again, this is my own subjective experience, but like suddenly, with the exception of Politico, which has been really good, you know, Matt Walker's been including a wide range of cartoon formats in Politico. It seems to me that mainstream media has gotten even more cautious and avoiding, I think, maybe some comics in different formats or comics that speak harsher truths. Have any of you gotten that sense?
Well, I think there's almost a business reason for what you're talking about, as well as I think substantive. When I started, the alternative newspapers were just booming. They were popping up in this was in the 90s. Every city would have one, then two. You know, smaller cities got their own alternative papers, and so so there was almost a new style of editorial newspaper cartooning that was popping up, because these were a lot less censored, a lot less vetted, as Marty was referring to. The style was usually multi-paneled, more wordy, more substantive, more challenging. For better or worse, there was just a new style was popping up. And so I think at a certain point, the daily papers said, oh, this is a competition. We better get some of those over here, or we're going to lose out. So that's when I think they began reaching out and started to get some alternative style cartoonists in their pages. I think at this point, they've just given up on that. The alternative newspapers are no longer competition. And I think they've given up on trying to innovate in cartooning. I think they just feel as though they have their legacy in terms of their print presence. They have their legacy cartoonists and or style, and they're going to leave anything that's new in cartooning to other websites, and it's not really competition for them. So I think there was something that to the sense maybe that the jury saw some merit in our work that was maybe unusual compared to the last 100 years of Pulitzer cartooning, which is usually a single panel, vetted editorial, voice of the editorial page kind of cartoon. I think what happened was that jury saw these unusual ones, presented it to the board, and the board was like, all three of these are not what we're used to for an editorial page cartoon. I think for different reasons, but I think that I think there may have been something like this isn't what we think of as an editorial cartoon. These are weird, have weird takes on things, and you know, I just think, you know, talking to what Lalo was talking about, honestly, those two guys, the Pulitzer board had such a wonderful opportunity to honor a different perspective. Forget about the different style, a different perspective coming from you know, minority cartoonists who are seeing the world in a different way. When you look back at the 100 years of the Pulitzer Prize cartoons, you know, they're all from one perspective, and these two guys had this different perspective, and it's amazing, and they're incredible artists. They had this opportunity to honor that, and they let it go.
Well, Lalo, I think you said something earlier about, you know, you have these groups that were basically like persecuted under Trump. And how I don't know how nice it would have been to be recognized after those years.
Yeah, I mean, I do what I do, you know, to fight back, to push back against all this. It's not a new repression. And it's what got me into cartooning, which is anti-immigrant sentiment against, you know, people in my community, my parents, and then it just, you know, opened up from that. And I thought that that's what editorial cartooning was supposed to be all about, right? Like pushing back against injustice and, you know, and you know, and pushing for truth. And I feel like, you know, again, I followed all the rules, man. I'm doing it right. I thought, you know, this is what the art form is since its inception, you know, pushing against the big guy that's trying to step on the little guy. And that's what I do. It's just, they didn't like my flavor of pushing back. I don't know.
Well, it seems like sometimes just speaking to what's happening, and what's happening is so extreme, you then, by just speaking your truth, are viewed as an extremist or outside the mainstream, or, you know, on the margins. I think particularly, like minority cartoonists are viewed in this way, like you're just speaking your truth, and yet it's so quickly dismissed as radical.
Yeah, can I say something? I've always needled some of my fellow cartoonists, Rob Rogers, but like you know, like when you know, like if Rob does a cartoon about immigration and he does a cartoon showing like the border crossing sign, which has been an iconic image on the border. This is nothing against Rob. I love Rob. And you know, he'll be hailed as a genius for using this sign that, you know, is what, you know, what a great move. And he is a genius. But I mean, if I use it, it's exactly what Jen said. If I use that sign, which I have like dozens of times, and I've probably used it the most of all cartoonists, they're like, ho hum, we've seen this before, you know, like, oh, you know, or you're biased, you know, you're I mean, I'm like, I don't know which side of the game to play anymore, you know. It's just, well, whatever.
That does remind me, there are times when like I'll do a feminist cartoon or something about women, and like no one cares. But then sometimes you'll get like a guy doing a cartoon about gender, and everyone's just like, oh, that's so sweet. Look at what a good guy. And I'm like, wait, no, I did that cartoon last year. I mean, I'm beyond the point of like caring about cartoons sort of duplicating one. I mean, it happens all the time, but there is this a difference in how it's read, you know, and how it's understood symbolically, depending on who the artist is. Marty, do you get the sense that, I don't know, you're just by speaking from your perspective that automatically kind of marginalizes you?
You know, we're easy to ignore. You know, the Native American has been here for forever, and everybody else are immigrants. You know, and when you bring that truth up, it's hard to swallow for some. You know, and it's hard to listen to, and a lot of time it's easy to ignore. You know, so I always try to put that out there that, yeah, you know, there's immigrants now, but they're immigrants going back 500 years now. And where I live at now is in Santa Fe. These lands were Aztecs, Mayans, Pueblos, and yet the border's drawn. And when these, Hispanics come here, they say, well, you're immigrants here, but then the reality is this is their land. So this is where they've been for thousands of years. Just because you draw a border over here, all of a sudden they're foreign. When in reality, Eurocentric people are immigrants as well, to these lands. And this country was built on stolen lands and built by slaves. And that's a truth that we really have to address, or really have to look at if we really do want to make America great. First we got to embrace our past and teach our past, so we can be better in the future. And when you talk like that, and when you do cartoons like that, while people try to push that aside, well, no, we'd rather put some other thing here, a Trump cartoon or whatever, and so it is hard to listen to, I think, and it's too easy to marginalize people.
It does seem to me that the powers that be are a little more comfortable with just caricatures of politicians, like a funny drawing of Trump. And I wrestled with this myself. I didn't even really want to draw Trump because it felt like it was almost just playing into this machine that just processes and digests everything and normalizes it and kind of ignores all the underlying issues. So before the session ends, I want to get to a subject that has bothered me about cartooning over the years, and that is what I would almost call a kind of cultural classism that seems to limit the professional prestige of editorial cartoonists. We've seen other art forms achieve all kinds of respectability, in the eyes of institutions. Like, graphic novels have taken off, and that's a good thing. I mean, graphic novels are literature. Other, fine arts obviously has been treated with great fanfare for, decades and centuries. It seems like, and even like punk is now kind of, which used to be looked down on, is now considered, the classic, form of music that is, respected on the pages of the New York Times. But it seems like political cartoonists to this day, and even more than ever, seem to be regarded as just a low form of low culture. And I wrote my senior thesis about this in college, about the subversive power of women's underground comics, and how it, about how it was low culture that was kind of attempting to subvert high culture. And I would like to hear just a little from you all about this problem where, even though political cartoons can be brilliant and express truths about the world, and I think that there's so many great ideas, they're still just not given that professional respect. Anyone want to jump in on that?
Well, I think you're right, and I've always thought it ironic that that's still true, and I'd love to know more about why that is. But it's very ironic that editorial cartoons and political cartooning are considered such marginal art forms. You could say an example is the disrespect from the Pulitzers this year, and yet around the world, when there is censorship or worse, violence, cartoonists are on the front lines of it. From oh my God, I'm forgetting the name of the magazine that had the tragedy, the French satirical magazine.
Charlie Hebdo.
Someone help me out. Which one?
Charlie Hebdo?
Charlie Hebdo. To the the Muhammad, the people who were killed for drawing Muhammad, and just there's all kinds of censorship. We're in the front lines for being too offensive and provocative on the one hand, and yet for being sort of marginalized and ineffective on the other. So I just think that's a strange irony to our art form. I think it is as an art form very powerful, and certainly the bad guys are acknowledging that in the worst way possible, and sometimes the good guys don't.
Yeah, I made friends with my colleagues in Mexico, and they're generally I think some of the greatest editorial cartoonists there are on the planet. And Latin America has great cartoons. The Middle East has great cartoons. But I was speaking to one of my friends down there, and I think I was on a Zoom panel with him, and I said, what we do is, it's hard over here, but I'm not complaining, because I know that guys like my friend, I mean, they, I go, your lives are in danger down there sometimes. So, well, that's why I live in Mexico City. I don't go out beyond that, because they have a metropolitan kind of a thing there, and they have lots of witnesses there. They can't get at them, but a cartoonist and journalists out in the countryside or out of the main core of Mexico, I mean, they're really doing the work, and they are cartoonists, and we know our friend Zunar is, he's often being persecuted by his government, and I mean, there's so many examples of it, and it's really too bad that I guess the Pulitzer's just trivializing, what we all do. It's not a good feeling.
Marty, do you have any last thoughts about that?
Well, there was a time I used to do write editorials, and I found that people don't read those things, but they read cartoons, and it speaks on such a basic level. You don't have to be very literate or very intelligent. You can be a child and understand a cartoon, which is why we use them to speak to them. But cartoonists, in third world countries and countries that are struggling with oppression, it's easy for a cartoon to speak to the people, to speak to the masses, and that's one thing that this medium is really powerful with, is the story of pictures. If you look at type A, B, C, D, E, F, G, those are pictures. They're put together in a unit to make a sentence, to get thought across over the ages. We do the same thing, but with drawings. We draw things. We put things out there. We put our ideas out there. And sometimes it affects people. Sometimes it gets people mad. But, that's our job. If we're not getting somebody mad, then we're not doing our job well. So I always try to think that if you want to affect change, or if you want to get something out there and you want to say something as an artist, it's a really strong medium to use, And although its heyday here in the United States was probably at the turn of the last century with Thomas Nash and these, the greats, they affected a large populace because there was a low educational standard across the board. So the cartoon spoke to people. So you could topple, businesses, you can topple people, you topple politicians, you can get your word out there a lot easier. But now in this day and age, you got technology and computers and such, and you're seeing a decline in a lot of things like cartoons and newspapers and the written word, unfortunately. But
can I say something real quick? Like I would like to almost, strangle anybody that says, "Hey, nice meme that you put out, Lalo." Like,
yeah,
not
exactly.
a meme. It's a political cartoon, and that shows, like we're being lost in the shuffle of all that. We should, be up in front and say, this is editorial cartooning. This is a real thing. People dedicate their lives to it, and I hate that the Pulitzer Board doesn't understand that. Apparently, I don't know.
Hey all, it's JP. I'm jumping in quick here. We're going to extend the session about 5 more minutes since we got a late start. We're now 15 minutes out, and we've got some Q&A. Jen, do you have access to the Q&A there, or do you want me to read a few of them?
Let's see. You know what? How much time do we have till the panel ends? 12:30? 15 minutes. I wanted to read one quote from the Smithsonian collection of newspaper comics and close out with that. And then we can go to the Q&A if that'll work for everyone. There's a great introduction to this book, which is about comic strips. It's about the history of newspaper comic strips. And it talks about, the introduction talks about how these strips were just so critically neglected and ignored and attacked. And because they were seen as basically, because they appealed to a mass readership. The papers they most grimly eschewed, the hearse titles connected in a chain from coast to coast, the Chicago Tribune, the New York World, the New York Daily News, were precisely the papers which carried the largest array of comic strips by the most talented artists. The papers most respected and read by the educators and taste makers, the New York Times, the New York Herald Tribune, the Boston Transcript, the Baltimore Sun, carried fewer strips, and the Times carried and carries none at all. Skipping down a little, it adds that had the comic strip material, which ran in the shunned popular press, been published instead by Vanity Fair or the New Yorker, or had it reached the august pages of the New York Times, there can be little doubt that the best examples of the strip form would have readily received the critical accolades and appreciative discussion that they should have had from the outset. I just thought that writing about comic strips and which are now actually, getting some sort of prestige in museums and whatnot. But I think in a way that speaks a little bit to the case of low culture popular political cartoons they're just they're too popular to be respectable. Anyway, on that note, let's go to the Q&A. I think I can read some questions here. We got one from Russell. What about the possibility that the Pulitzer board was being overly sensitive to the Trump phenomenon, that the selection committee did too good of a job and the board couldn't go that far?
I didn't put that many Trump cartoons, so I was like, okay, some of these are kind of easy, so I tried to mix it up because I felt like, I don't want to just coast on Trump. So I don't know about that.
I had a lot of Trump. I don't know which comics I did, but I'm sure there was a lot of Trump because I did a lot of Trump that year and the 3 years before. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to speculate about why, what it was. If it wasn't Trump, there's something else that we were doing that was pushing buttons. The three of us, are very. I know, you guys work. It's very opinionated and very sharp, and so that should be a positive qualification. Maybe that disqualified us, but we just don't know. They're not saying anything about the reasons for why we weren't, why they couldn't choose a winner.
Well, I don't think Trump has that kind of power. He was a joke. And these cartoons practically wrote themselves through his administration. But I think when we're talking about that vetting process, of a cartoon going through it, I think we're just too on the edge for them. Their backgrounds are in newspapers and they're used to playing it safe. And, we're not safe.
I think there is a lot of awareness of not alienating Trump supporters. Like it's fair game to make fun of Trump, but I think newspapers have been very sensitive about not hurting the feelings of Trump's fan base.
They read?
I think you saw that in a lot of mainstream newspapers, that were kind of afraid to disrespect the office and also, disrespect Republicans in general. Not all Republicans were Trumpies, but You know, I think there was people just want to play it safe, you know, because they do have to worry about advertising. They do have to worry about, you know, investors, and they do have to worry about their bottom line.
So we got some more questions piling up here. From Steve Greenberg for Lalo, since you came so close to the award before with the same format and viewpoints, what, if anything, may have changed from the previous time you came so close?
Man, I don't know. And again, I had forgotten about the, you know, that the nonsense in the earlier one, which someone in the comments had a good point about Barry Blitt winning. I mean, awesome imagery, great artist, but yeah, I mean, my edge hasn't changed. I'm getting better each year. And you know, I don't know what else I could do, you know. Move to New York and start drawing at the New Yorker, or go protest from the New York Times. I mean, I don't know what to do. So I'm just gonna keep doing what I do.
So see, Colum Rogers writes in, could the lack of respect be due to our association with newspapers? Even in their prime, they were cheap, daily, and disposable.
I wish I was in more newspapers.
Yeah.
It seems to me that there's plenty of newspaper writers that get, you know, people who deal in prose are given, you know, gravitas.
That's so true. And, you know, people who, I know cartoonists who work at, you know, newspapers, or work for newspapers, and, you know, are they paid they're the same as the editorial writers? Do they have the same kind of corner offices? And, you know, I know that's not true. Yeah, it's hard. And then there's also, you know, comic strips, which are, you know, associated with newspapers, and they're was, you know, made to be disposable, but, you know, they're collected in books, and have, you know, Peanuts is regarded as, well, maybe just by me, but it's regarded as one of the great American, there you go, great American achievements in all of art.
Well, you know, the newsprint is a commodity. It can only last about 3 or 4 months in storage. So consequently, newspapers have to buy these huge tons of paper, and through that process, you know, so it's kind of a profit thing, you know. So news budgets get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it seems like cartoons are getting edged out and edged out. You know, like the comic page used to be two spreadsheets on a newspaper, and now they're just barely a quarter page in some cases. And they're printing like Peanuts and Blondie and that Rex Morgan MD, and cartoonists that have been long dead, you know. So it's really hard for young cartoonists to get in newspapers. But I think it all just goes back to the decline in newspapers in general, you know, with the internet, losing subscriptions and whatnot. I think cartoonists are really paying the price for that too as well. Yeah.
We got time for one more question, I think. We have a question from Brian Marshall saying, I don't see children's literature as a category. Has that always been the case? I ask in relation to cartooning ostensibly for kids like Charles Schulz and Peanuts. Well, it is interesting to me. I read a lot of Peanuts books as sort of as a comfort read, really, during the pandemic. And I was amazed at how existential those cartoons were and how grown up. I mean, they were so smart and kind of depressing. I mean, it was really a perfect read during lockdown. And I know, well, Ruben, you've been doing your Q-Nuts series, which suggests to me that you've been reading a fair amount of Peanuts lately too.
Right.
But I guess,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, and making fun of Trump supporters instead of Trump, which is what you said could make editors concerned. But yeah, I think, well, I just want to say, I want to push back a little bit, because there's been some negativity about the way that editorial cartoons are perceived, certainly by entities like the Pulitzer Board, and the gatekeepers to high culture. But I think that we are actually more read, and people are more interested in this art form than ever. I think that I'm more read now when I'm with mostly an online presence, with more people very interested in my comic strip than I was when I was in the Village Voice and the Washington Post and the New York Times once a month. I get much more feedback. More people know who I am. I bet Lalo, I bet, and Marty, I bet you guys have felt the same thing. The web was, it was a tough transition, at least for me, to like try to replicate certainly the income that I was making from that world. But the exposure was always there. So I think that editorial cartooning, from it is a spectrum from memes to actually, what we're doing. People want visual content in their online browsing, and especially sharp stuff. And I think that, that's what political cartooning is doing now. So I just want to push back on the fact that, we don't get respect, but we do get eyeballs, and a lot of interest. So that's what we have to content ourselves with.
It's a perfect piece of content for the internet. I mean, it's quick, it looks good, it's shareable. I
Right.
mean, like I did if you're an editorial cartoonist, you're doing stuff about what's happening in the news and try to chase that news cycle. And, like one of my biggest cartoons this year, which I'm putting in the Pulitzer pack for next year, is my Simone Biles cartoon. Just went stratospheric viral, like celebrities are sharing it, and just bananas. And we're relevant. We got our finger on the pulse, baby.
Just get no respect.
Yeah.
Okay, any last words from anyone?
Oh, hey, before I forget, real quick, all three of us are freelance hustlers to the max, and I think I think Clay Jones said something about that in the comments, that maybe they don't respect freelancers, but we keep almost winning. So the hustle is real, and we love this art form. I almost basically pay to do this art form. So I'm not giving it up ever. I'm busy. So I'm gonna keep at it. I know my colleagues here will, and I hope everybody out there will too. Yeah, I'll shut up.
Well, I will say too, if I think a lot of us have subscription services, and the people that are subscribing are super intelligent and educated, interesting people who are basically people who read newspapers in the first place. It's like they're like the audience is, in some ways, they're very people who are also subscribing to these mainstream, like news organizations. And so in a way that, and we are getting the readers, like Ruben said, like there are more readers than ever, but it's just the structure is sort of different now. Okay, I think we probably are running out of time. How are we doing, JP?
We got another minute, so, and we're fungible. We're a fungible here.
Okay, well, we have one more question from Steve Greenberg. Has the notoriety from this incident helped any of you to add any clients?
No. Yeah, it's we're in the, as Lalo said, we're hustling, and we have to. It isn't like where you could just sit in your office and get a paycheck from a daily newspaper anymore. The three of us have to, hustle and get subscribers and or readers and or clients in different forms and sell books. And so, all this stuff has a cumulative effect. So I'm sure it can only help. So, I'm grateful for that. But, nothing, no big, corner was turned as far as I could see in my own life, in my own career.
Well, it brings attention, and that's crucial for any business, So it's hard to say if I got an account because of it, but I might have got noticed because of it. I don't know if that's hard to phantom, but it's really difficult to try to quantify anything like this. But it's all good,
Yes.
And I will, like Lalo, I will enter in all these contests every year annually because it is part of the business we're in.
So you all are going to try again next year?
Oh yeah.
Are you?
I think so.
Like Marty was saying, in a business perspective, we don't really, this is part of the business plan, because we don't really advertise, right? Like other businesses will advertise. We just put our stuff out there, and yeah, a big way to get attention is winning one of these things. Also, being denied one of these things apparently is a really good way of getting a lot of press. So I mean, I'm happy with that. I'll take that.
It's a win-win, as they say.
Yeah.
A lose
Or a
win.
lose-lose.
A no win, no win.
Okay, so I think that is going to do it for us. Okay, we have time for one last question. Okay, one quick question, then we're going to end it. Clay Jones has weighed in at the last second asking, do you think there's hate from editors because we are loved by readers?
Yes, that's exactly the reason. We're so loved and so popular that the tastemakers just can't stand to give us awards.
They're so jealous.
Yeah, we're also way better looking than editors. Have you seen some of these editors? Oh, no, I'm not going to win ever.
So true.
Okay, and that's a wrap. Thanks so much, you guys, for joining us. That was fun. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Thank you.
You're all winners. Okay.